or tried to do in the old days when you're going to do this with lab technicians. So you can do that. And you can do things like, oh, what's a scary experiment that they do? So let's take let's take the HIV virus that we know, and let's change around the surface coat, the proteins on the coat of the virus, 100 different random permutations on the one found in nature. And what's cool about that, cool he says, right, is that nature may not actually be able to evolve to some of those permutations on the coat because it would have had to have passed through some intermediate stage which would kill the organism. But there's no reason, right, if you're just kind of changing around the coding at random, you can't have any combination you want, and so you can check all the variations of DNA that could exist in theory, even though nature might not make some of them. And you know, if you're doing that for HIV, that scares people. The whole bird flu thing, right, is like that. Let's mess around with the stuff that keeps this from being transmitted from person to person. Maybe nature couldn't make that at all, but guys in Rotterdam can. So this debate, scandal, what have you, right, about genetically engineered bird flu is a variation on this. You can do stuff that maybe nature will get around to doing but hasn't done yet. At that point, it gets ideological, and you have to take the claims with a grain of salt. But the dominant paradigm in synthetic biology is, well, gee, we know what the function of little pieces of DNA is, so what we're going to do is we'll collect different pieces of DNA, each of which does a specific thing, and we'll just drop them in the organism when we want an organism that does X, Y, and Z. Want the weapon to be resistant to 3 known vaccines, and it should, you know, seek out people of Middle Eastern descent, and it should do 7 other things, and I'm just going to have separate pieces of DNA that do that. The problem is the old problem, right, that if you actually do that, it crowds out DNA that keeps the thing hardy or alive, or they interact in unexpected ways. It's the old problems, but there's a bet in synthetic biology that, gee, eventually we're going to overcome this pleiotropy problem. Part of that is that they keep trying to build organisms with minimal gene sets, on the theory that if there's less DNA there for the organism, if I add more DNA, it won't run into existing stuff. So there's this idea, right, that eventually you'll be able to make stuff from standard parts, and you're not going to have this pleiotropy problem. And boy, when they do that, right, that's a large part of the story about why traditional bioweapons were difficult, that every time I breed in some new characteristic, I lose 3 old ones. If the synthetic biologists managed to do that, that really would change the world. So far, not so much luck. But the idea is that eventually you make things that are increasingly machine-like, and that, you know, you get these stories of people over in San Francisco, for example, who want to build this stuff that, you know, an organism that goes around with little logic circuits, just like a computer, except they're all biological, and it sniffs for chemicals that are given off by cancers, and as long as it doesn't smell them, it's fine, but when it comes up next to one of those chemicals, then suddenly it secretes some cancer-killing chemical like mad, right? So it's a little guided missile, right? It's the idea that it becomes less and less an organism and more a biological machine. So that's the, you know, the goal and ambition of synthetic biology. How much of that they can achieve, right, is a little less clear, but those are sort of the spectrum of claims that you would think about, and how do those translate into weapons? Well, the obvious one, right, is you make some slavish copy from nature. And if you notice, everything I've been telling you about why biological weapons are hard is on the theory that, well, you know, if you do some little change to the genome, then suddenly the thing doesn't live anymore, or it acquires characteristics that aren't useful in a weapon, and pleiotropy is really bad, right? But look, if you make a slavish copy from nature, a nice literal copy, the polio wasn't quite a literal copy, it isn't very hardy. The 1918 influenza is supposed to be really good. And I feel like the waiter, try the 1918 influenza, it's really good tonight, sir. And you know, if you could make a slavish copy of smallpox, that would be good. So, you know, in that sense, about resurrecting organisms, that's something that definitely seems like a policy issue. I just got done telling you that if you could make one thing, as a biological weapon that would probably work, or might work with high probability, or might work in expectation, right? Smallpox is on the very short list of things you'd want to do. You can't acquire it today, but with synthetic biology, you can make it tomorrow. So that's something you should seriously think about. And then, you can modify organisms much better than the Russians used to. So maybe you can make a really good bird flu. That's what the guys in Rotterdam claim to have done. And then there's this whole question about advanced weapons, and we saw the list, but I mean, okay, maybe you can't do something that targets ethnic groups, but, what can you target? What things become feasible? So these are still difficult experiments in the civilian world when you have innocuous purposes, but still, right? Maybe that changes some things, and I just want, that basically to whet your appetite, because we'll come back to synthetic biology policy later in the course. And the barriers, well, the barriers are the same as before. You're still doing genetic engineering even if it's cheaper, so you have to do this fine tuning, which means that to see if you got it right, you have to have this big animal program. Pleiotropy is another way of saying that. And would a terrorist actually want to do this? Right, so if you're worried about investing a lot of money and then being laughed at, if that's a constraint on your ability, you're big, fearsome Al-Qaeda, do you want to hear that you spent, $10 million on some charlatan and nothing came of it, even if he wasn't a charlatan, nothing comes of it with great regularity? Is that an investment that a terrorist would want to do? I don't know. But, if people are talking about, well, maybe I could put smallpox back on the table as a weapon, that gets your attention, right? It's, to the extent that any of these threats is plausible, synthetic biology sort of opens the door to stuff that's interesting and alarming. All right, so that's where I am. I'll take questions and then we'll let you take a break. Questions? Nobody's going to interfere with the break. All right, 7 minutes. Let's come back at 20 of it. Does this thing run out of battery? You can always stop it. Probably stop recording that.